movies and games always seem to come off as they're at war with each other. It makes because they like to compare the two basically. And there are some differences and there are some similarities to movies and video games. But I feel like this big component about a real big difference between movies and video games is that the fact that the experience of a game can be so much longer than a movie. You can spend up to 100 hours on a game and experience the story that is before you. Or you can experience it in a 3-hour movie. In some case with the Titanic, like 4 hours, 5 hours. But it's still not as much time. So you get more time with characters. The story becomes a bigger interaction experience. And also, obviously, you hitting the button and interacting creates a connection with what you're doing on the screen. And I think that's what another component that makes it so different than anything else is the interactive experience that you get with video games. And it's so good because it helps you. It could possibly take you on a big magical experience that maybe leaves you wanting more. And this experience with The Last Guardian is definitely that kind of experience. Welcome to my review of The Last Guardian. For all my reviews, there will be spoiler free, and not to worry if you want to talk spoilers. I will always have an accompanying video to this one called Spoiler Talk, and we'll talk about that one on another day. And in the spoiler talk, there is nothing that is off limits. We talk about everything that has to do with the game. But for this one, since this review is spoiler free, I ask that you do leave your comments below spoiler free. So let's get started because we got a lot to talk about. So the game starts you it's centered around a boy and this bird dog that you end up finding out that the creature type is called Trico. And you as the boy have lost your memory. You wake up in this place. You don't know how you got there. And there's just this giant bird dog standing next to you. And you, with this bird dog, the goal is to get out. And progressively as you go through the game, you also gain some memories, which is interesting. Get some past experience so you kind of understand what's going on. And basically, as you get to the top, you're tackling different kinds of puzzles. You're tackling different kinds of experiences that involve you and the bird dog Trico to kind of work together to be able to get past these challenges so you can keep going to hopefully escape is what the overall objective is. You are on the bottom floor of this giant, what looks like a crater, and it's a built city within that crater. So you're trying to get to the top to get out as fast as possible. It's a really simple premise, but like other games from Team Ico, which after I'd actually just released my Shadow of the Colossus remake review, and thinking about that game more after doing this game, they really center around relationships, and that's what this game, it centers around the relationship between the boy and Trico, just like Shadow of the Colossus is around the relationship of the warrior, his horse, and his lover that he's trying to save. So they all center around relationships, which is really a good comparison of kind of what they tackle in regards to their games. Because to my knowledge, Ico, they basically is a relationship between a boy and this girl because of the holding hands component as well. So anyways, back to this game. I went on a little tangent, but they always center around a relationship of some kind. And what really, I think, sells the relationship overall is the fact that this creature truly feels like it's alive and is real. There's many things that Trico does that makes it feel like it's a true live creature. It's the way it interacts with the environment that around it, where it can go from laying down, where if you leave for a little bit, it'll just lay down waiting for you to do something, or when you get outside, it interacts with the bugs and animals that you might run into outside, and like it's a fresh puppy trying to explore and see something new and do something with it. It also will walk wherever it wants. If you're not trying to ask it to do something, it's going to walk where it wants, like it's its own living, real thing. And it makes it feel like it has its own curiosity and its own mind, which is really clever. And it just, again, it makes it feel so alive. It also fights to protect you and needs your help times where you need to if they throw spears at it, the spears are actually in Trico, and you actually have to take out those spears. You also can use food to help it, that kind of thing. But overall, for Trico, how you kind of let it do things is you're kind of training them. You're using them to interact with the environment by using verbal cues, and sometimes eventually using certain commands, using your body to kind of command it to do different things. And it really becomes very natural of how your relationship with Trico increases, not only you with your friendship with the bird, but also with the way you're communicating with it. At first, it's not going to listen to you, and I think that's one of the downturns that for a person that if they don't have patience, is going to really struggle with, because obviously it doesn't know you. You got to build that rapport. You got to build that relationship, and once that relationship is built, then they better understand you, and you better understand them. You both know how to communicate with each other. You both know how to work together. And so if you don't have the patience, it becomes very frustrating, especially because it's not going to listen to you the first time in the first chunk of the game. It's going to take patience. Some advice I can give you that kind of worked for me occasionally is sometimes as simple as changing where you're standing and using the same command. It might be a way that activates the command and Trico understands what you're saying, but it also feels natural because sometimes maybe the Trico doesn't understand what you're trying to tell it by standing in that space, but they're like, oh, you're standing there, I get what you mean now. So, but as you get further, it's just like training a pet. It gets so much easier that the simple commands only takes one time to say, or it even knows what you want it to do, and all you have to do is hop on them, which is kind of cool. You get to climb on Trico. I liked doing that. Climbing on Trico was really fun and exciting because you'll like jump all over the place, and so riding it was so satisfying and so cool. It just was really, really cool. I don't know how, but this team knows how to do air really well, and how to feel the motion of air, and just how this creature moves and how big it is and how it interacts with that environment, because this temple is breaking apart. And so there are times where Trico will go on places and it's breaking, and it's really scary, and it just keeps you in suspense. And we'll talk about the suspense a little bit later. But there's something I do want to mention about the puzzles, is that when I was playing, a lot of the time, I was overthinking the puzzles. I was thinking that they were harder puzzles, and I was making it harder for myself than it should have been. A lot of the time, I would run around the entire space that was around me, looking for a piece to the secret. I was like, oh, this must be a secret thing I got to do here, and then I'll have to throw this over the top. And I'm like, why can't I throw this over the top? Maybe I'll throw this on top of this, and then throw this on top of that. And I tried to do a bunch of different things that, in the end, it was like the path that was right in front of me. Most of the time, that's what it is. Most of the time, it's the simple path that is before you, or the simple task that is in front of you, is what is really needed to be done. Now, there are some challenging puzzles. I will admit that. There's some challenging things that do make you think really, really hard, and they are truly satisfying when you do figure them out. That's something that works really well in this game, and I think they had a good balance where it wasn't constantly difficult puzzles all the time, and that it gave you a good satisfaction when you had to conquer some of the harder puzzles. But a lot of the part is, the puzzles were in front of me the whole time. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes at the same time. But this game, though, just like any Team Ico game, really has a great world building. I said it in my Shadow Colossus review. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But basically, I said that had such mystery, and unfortunately, just like Shadow of the Colossus, this game never explores everything, these elements overall. And like I even said in Shadow of the Colossus, I wish there was something that I could read throughout the journey to kind of understand the world that would help me just get more in depth in the world that is before me, because it's great. But I will say they answer more questions in this one than in other games that I've played of theirs, which is great. They answered a lot more questions, which were, when I got the answers, holy cow, some of them were true surprises, some of them were awe, some of them were fascinating, some of them were really difficult to comprehend, not because that they were difficult as something to think about. It's just emotionally unfortunate for what was happening in that situation. But they answer a bunch of questions, which I really, really appreciated. And they did give me awe and surprising and fascinating. Now, I talked about a little bit earlier about sometimes there are moments of suspense where sometimes Trico is this huge creature and he'll jump on something and he'll start breaking apart. And there's so many moments where I felt like I was holding my breath that put me in pure suspense. And it was just so effective because when you have that constant good relationship between Trico and the boy, constantly you're together all the time, you are creating that rapport and that relationship, and you don't want anything to bad happen to each other. Especially something I didn't mention about Trico, what made it real is that it even made noises. It made animal noises where you could feel like it was had emotion to it, which another thing was just something that made it feel so perfect, because you can't sell it unless you have that relationship, and you can't sell that relationship unless you can relate to the things. So the dog element of that bird dog is definitely its whine, its whimper, and it's something that most people understand, how if a dog is in suspense or a dog is in sadness, a dog is happy. It made those kinds of noises, and so you could tell what their emotion was at the moment. Now, something that helps with that suspense as well is the music. It dramatically helps in moments where, because one is a powerful orchestra-made music score, and the music is not used very often, but when it is used in the right moments where it feels so effective that you're truly stepping into a great thing here, and it just helps. It helps in the moment, and it helps overall, which it just really makes its impact, because it really puts in the moments that it needs to be there and lets the quiet moments be quiet, where the relationship is what's important, not the music, not everything around you. It's that relationship. Again, it's all centered around this relationship. This whole game is about a relationship. But I will say something that I did not like. That was really a little frustrating, and it wasn't like the puzzles or that kind of element. It was that I would get so far up, because obviously you're traveling up this area to get out, and something would happen where you kind of ended up going backwards, and it happened more than once. I would have been okay if it happened once, but it happened more than one time, which was a little kind of taken off. I was like a little annoyed after the second time it happened, where if it was just one time, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when it happened more than once, I felt like it made it longer than it should have been. It didn't need to add. There is something that happened on the second fall that is really dramatic that we'll talk about in the spoiler review, but they could have put that in the first fall, or put that somewhere else in the game where they might have fall slightly, not fall as far. I can't explain a lot without spoiling the game, but there's a part where you fall multiple times and you go backwards, and it takes a little more time than it should overall. But honestly, everything builds to the end. Everything builds emotionally to a moment where it's heartbreaking. I'd say heartbreaking. That's the best word to describe it. Yet it's a great way to end the journey. I have my own personal second ending that I would love to do instead, but it made its impact. It did what it was supposed to do, which was to build that relationship, and then at the end something happens where that relationship's really put to the test, and it really puts you through an emotional moment. And I think it really worked because of the whole point of this game was a relationship, and it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Build that relationship, make it work. And so I think when I was looking back at the 3 games that they have made from Team Ico, I think this is probably their second best game. I still think Shadow of the Colossus is probably the best game they've ever made from that team so far. But I think this one, even though I'm saying it's my second favorite, it still is a great game that people should give a shot, especially because this game came out multiple years ago. I think it's been out almost 2 years. I think people should take the time to take a second look at this game, especially if it's on a discount. I highly recommend you just try it out, because this this is nothing you really get to experience in any other game. There's not really another game where you get to have an emotional experience with a creature, and that is the basis of what the game is, which is really, really great. Again, I still recommend this game, and I think it's a great game to check out. So that is my review of The Last Guardian. What did you think about the game if you played it? Let me know in the comments below, and please remember to leave them spoiler free, and look forward to my spoiler talk, which will be coming out pretty soon here. Now, if you like this content, check out the other content I have on Freeze Frame Rate. Go ahead and give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you want to keep up with everything I release here on Freeze Frame Rate weekly, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mitch, and I'm signing off saying, see you soon.